Good evening,
Hello.
Dr. Rachel. How are you?
I am doing really well. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. I'm aware you've come from a staff meeting and pretty heavy content at that. So I'm happy to just have your presence here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a really exciting topic. It's one that I know lies close to both of our hearts and comes out a lot in practice and our conversations, and that is the attachment theory, which before we get too far into it, I thought we might start with a brief description so that people can recognise in themselves what style they might have. Do you have anything to add in terms of the introduction, Rachel?
I would just like to, I'm really happy for you to give these definitions and share, because I know you wrote a fantastic article that you put up on LinkedIn this morning. Perhaps you could put that in the comments later.
Yes.
Terrific. And I just want people to know that, we talk about our attachment systems because we are biologically hardwired and come into the world hardwired to be attached. The only way that there are so many of us humans on the planet and that we have such survival skills, it's not because of our sharp teeth or our big talons or our hard exoskeletons. It's because we get attached to each other and we bond, and it's through our bonds that we cooperate and that we work in groups and that we survive. So it's very biologically based, this stuff around attachment, and our early experiences shape our brain, so therefore they shape our attachment styles. That's what I would like to say.
Thank you for that reminder. It is fundamental to our species. I know that the book Sapiens is very much based around the recognition that as our evolution as a species is highly dependent on our ability to orchestrate community, to collaborate, to cooperate. And yes, you're right, that is heavily founded on attachment. Yes, please keep threading the biology in, because my understanding of attachment theory is that the way that we bonded with our care providers as infants is what plays out in our relationships as adults. And this applies to our romantic relationships, but our familial relationships, to our collegiate relationships. In fact, my understanding is the attachment style is consistent across all our relationships. Is that true to say?
I mean, I think there is a way in which it will often be, yes and no.
Great. Give us nuance. That's what we love.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we have a very strong disposition towards, say, a dismissive avoidant style, which we'll get into again to refresh people's memory what that means, but that at some point that tendency in us will come out in most relationships, particularly in a romantic relationship, but any other close relationship, whether it's with a child or a friend, possibly with, a boss, any authority figure. So a strong attachment style preference will probably sooner or later come out. And yet I've heard many stories from clients saying, with this partner, I was kind of quite anxious and a bit preoccupied, but then I was very secure with this other person, or I went into a more dismissive mode with this other person. So I've also seen how different people might bring out different parts of our psyche.
That is very interesting. And like all pigeonholes, we all have aspects of each. That's my understanding. It makes sense that different sides of us would come out with different people. But before we get too deep into it, I think it'd be helpful for us to give an introduction to the three styles. Please feel free to add your understanding too, Rachel. You've been working with this much longer than I have. The dismissive avoidant is commonly described as somewhat aloof or detached. And my understanding is that they were encouraged as young humans to seek their needs independently of the care providers. And so when met with a situation of vulnerability, as we are when we have needs, there'll be a tendency to withdraw rather than approach. That's the dismissive avoidant. Then we have the preoccupied anxious, and these ones are commonly described as clingy or needy, dependent, or even codependent. And my understanding again is that as youngsters, these ones were inclined to come towards the care provider. Oh, you know, daddy's got you, mummy's got you. And while to a certain extent, both of these are valuable, off you go, you've got this, or come and get your needs met from me. I think ultimately the secure individual, and this is the third style of attachment, develops when they're given the ability to distinguish when to reach out to someone to have needs met and when to meet our own needs. And again, it really comes down to nuance. It's a subtle thing as a parent to facilitate a child's growth into the recognition of that distinction. Do you have anything to add, particularly on the developmental side, Rachel? Because that fascinates me.
So the one that, I know I agree with your definitions, and you haven't mentioned fearful, avoidant, or disorganized style yet, have you?
No, I tend to work with the broader ones, but yes, please let us know more about that one too.
Well, I think if some, I think of my dear father. He grew up with a mother who always told him that he was wonderful and brilliant, and a father who was very, very punitive and chastised him a lot and put him down a lot. And in that scenario where we have one parent building us up and one putting us down, or perhaps a very inconsistent mother. So another person I know comes to mind whose mother, when she was sober, could be a very good parent and demonstrate some of those secure attachment behaviors. And then when drunk was very volatile, unpredictable, and inconsistent, of course. So this can be very confusing for the child. And so in adulthood, the way this might show up is the person sort of seems to be there and then not be there. They themselves might be inconsistent in a relationship, kind of run hot and cold. There is a deep yearning for connection, a deep yearning for intimacy. So they're not sort of completely shut down. They're not dismissive, but then they get afraid of intimacy. So there's obviously overlap between that one and the dismissive, and between that one and the anxious avoidant. And, again, like you said, when we get categorical, we can run into trouble. But these are just general ways of thinking about what we see in adult relationships.
Yeah, this is one of the few pigeonholes that I actually think is really, really valuable, perhaps because it is so fundamental and so unconscious. And if I may just share my screen briefly, this is an image that you and I have shared together in workshops, but you introduced it to me, Rachel, and it's a golden one. And I think it frames attachment theory beautifully in relationship, for the fact that what I've noticed is that that the freeze response can kick in, and that our behaviours are very unconscious. So dissociation, numbness in relationship, shame.
And they're innocent, right? This is our physiology kicking in to try, and these are all survival mechanisms.
Yes.
Yeah. So, we are naturally hardwired to be in that social engagement, safe, social, joyful, present, curious, open. Yes. And then we can go up that curve when we are, our needs are not being met. We are triggered in some way. And I think that graph really takes us on the journey of what happens as we get more and more dysregulated, from fight and flight into complete overwhelm, freeze, and shut down.
Yes.
But then we can bring ourselves back down. We can regulate and deactivate this part of our nervous system and come back down the other side to openness, calm, social engagement, the ability to connect once again. But many of us have gotten stuck to some degree, or in some sort of situations, stuck in the freeze response.
And the reason I wanted to bring this in, not only for those who've done our workshops, who will recognise it, but But to highlight that in relationship, we often don't recognise that our attachment style is playing out. That's been my experience. It just takes a lot of ability to stop, calm down, and reflect to actually step out of the dynamic in a relationship. What's your thoughts on that, Rachel?
Absolutely. I mean, there's part of the survival response, and that graph is about our survival responses, is to once bitten, twice shy. It's sort of like, that's an old proverb for a reason. When we've had traumatic experiences or experiences of being neglected, which is also a form of trauma, then our system adapts to that and it's ready for next time. And it kind of makes sense. If you got lost in the woods and then something almost killed you, your brain is hardwired to remember where that place was so that you don't go back there. And we have that in relationships as well. So when I've worked with people who have a very dismissive style or a very anxious, preoccupied style, we can usually find somewhere in their earlier experiences where they're still operating as if they were back there, kind of frozen and stuck in time to a degree. It's hard to find that part of them that's still stuck, because not all of them is still stuck there. But we do want to work with the body as well as the mind to get the message down. That was then, this is now, to really let that message sink in. It's over. This is a new situation. So it's a real journey of kind of developing self-regulation skills to get back to calm, as well as communication skills to have a different experience from the past, as well as cognitive skills to talk to yourself. That can be part of self-regulation, and have a different narrative going on in your head about yourself and about the world, so that you can build self-efficacy around this. Because so much of having a secure attachment style, which I do want to make sure we get to, is how to cultivate a secure attachment style. So much of this is just about developing more self-belief, more self-esteem, more self-confidence, so that you don't have to run away from relationships, but you don't have to depend on them in that codependent way that you spoke about, that anxious way. And so that we can sort of be in the middle and steady ourselves.
Sorry, I just heard my preoccupied, anxious cat at the door, but I think she's been attended to.
Yeah, cats usually have one of those two insecure attachment styles, to be honest.
In fact, it occurred to me today that probably most listeners are preoccupied, anxious. One of my dear clients and colleagues said that she had to laugh that she was avoiding our next workshop, which we took to mean that she's probably dismissive, avoidant. So, I really want to honour those dismissive avoidants who have showed up tonight and willing to actually take on board some of this, because I think the preoccupied, anxious types are more likely to seek answers, talk with their friends, even open up the conversation with the partner, whereas the dismissive, avoidant types may actually unconsciously avoid exposure to these kind of conversations. So I just wanted to honour the dismissive avoidance in the room today.
Yeah, and like all of us, most of us don't really look, if we ever even do our inner work. So good on anyone who's watching, because probably you're at some point on your pilgrimage of your own self-work. But if we even do our inner work, now I've forgotten what I was going to say. That is so annoying. It's hard, it's anxiety provoking. And, but we have probably, that's what I was going to say, we've probably got to the point where we're suffering so much that we had no choice but to do our inner work. This is the usefulness of suffering. It's like, something's got to give. I can't keep living like that. And so, I mean, I agree with you, but, also people with the disorganized attachment style, and even the dismissive style, if they suffer enough, they will often come forward.
They'll be forced to. So just to recap on the fearful or disorganized, which we could class as the fourth category, they've often had either parents with very different stances on attachment, and they tend
Parenting behaviours.
So
very, very different parenting behaviours.
Parenting or confusing parenting, as in hot and cold, on, off, sober, addicted. And they then themselves tend to run hot and cold and are afraid of intimacy.
And some of this is so subtle, as we said on our last live video on this topic. And you might not see it in your friends, and you might not see it in your lover for the first 6 to 12 months. Some of this is very subtle and can take a while to show up.
So when do you find it shows up, Rachel? This is an interesting question to me. When does it get revealed? Have you any patterns that you can speak of?
Yeah, there are a few common kind of key milestones for it. So a classic partnering, it's absolutely classic, is someone who tends towards anxious, preoccupied, pairing up with someone who tends towards dismissive. And so a classic scenario will be when the more anxious, preoccupied one wants to come closer and wants to talk about commitment and wants to pin some things down and maybe make a decision or come up with a timeline for the relationship. And the other person experiences that also. It's just a different manifestation of anxiety usually. It's the anxiety of losing autonomy versus the anxiety of losing connection. This is very oversimplified, but we could almost map out these attachment styles in terms of fear of...
So helpful, yes. A fear of connection.
A fear of losing connection or a fear of losing autonomy.
Yes.
And so the anxious, preoccupied one is more preoccupied with fear of losing some connection, whereas the dismissive one might fear losing autonomy. Now, if that's the case, then this person quite possibly, and I'm thinking of a few clients I've worked with, they felt very intruded upon as children. Perhaps they didn't get the autonomy and the freedom, the choice that they wanted in certain ways growing up. So, of course, they have a fear of losing autonomy or independence or freedom. Part of this could be temperamental, personality styles as well. And so it could show up in a relationship when commitment talks start to happen. And this one gets anxious about being kind of pressured and having to make a commitment. This one gets anxious about not getting the love and intimacy that they desire. And in friendships, it might be a similar pattern. It can happen in, say, a boss relationship or collegial relationship when one's pushing more for intimacy and connection and the other one experiences that pressure. I mean, this doesn't necessarily, by the way, speak to attachment styles. This is the normal dynamics of relationships. But it's worth looking into for ourselves. And the other time that's classic is when children come into the picture. Once children are born, for so many couples I've talked to, and this was my experience and my friends' experiences, it'll bring up a lot of unconscious material for the mother and the father. And suddenly they become aware of patterns that were just bubbling under the surface, not so obvious to anybody, because the stress, under stress, our old patterns come out.
Yes, that's right. And it begs the question, if we are tending to be acting out in the way that our parents conditioned us, are we unconsciously conditioning our children to act out in the very same way? And if so, would you encourage people to use the recognition of these fears, fear of loss of connection, loss of autonomy, to shift that patterning for their children? Is there ways to do that? Are we covering too much ground, or can we go into parenting our own kids?
No, I mean, I think that we could say a lot about it, or we could say a little bit. Let's say a little bit. That we're all, as parents, and you can think about your own parenting and how you were parented as we discuss this. But as parents, we do walk a fine line, don't we, between wanting to love and protect our children and show them all the love that we hopefully feel for them and stay in connection, keep that intimate sort of bond between parent and child, protect them. But then you know, I'm just thinking so much about my own experiences as I say this, but then
Great.
wanting to
Yeah, got to
push them out of
support.
nest,
Yeah.
encourage independence,
Mm.
and, you know, kind of, and all those little daily decisions about like, how much pressure do I put on them to keep their room tidy? You know, when do I let things go? When do I let them kind of make their own bad choices so they can learn the hard way? You know, all of these little and not so little choices of parenting, if you're doing it, trying to do it consciously, where you encourage both connection and autonomy. It's a dynamic tension in every relationship, I think.
Isn't it? That's a wonderful phrase, Rachel. Yes, yes. I'm really appreciative of this framework that you brought, the dynamic tension between autonomy and connection. I'm starting to see it everywhere, and it's really clear in attachment theory. I guess to simplify the parenting question, if we ourselves have recognized our own attachment style, are the chances high that we are playing that out with our children and unconsciously giving them the same attachment style? And can we shift that through developing a more secure attachment ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think so much of this stuff is just unconscious. And once we make it conscious, we can really work with it. You know, a big way to become more secure in yourself and therefore in your attachment relationships is to work on becoming aware of your needs. And letting yourself feel your feelings. So I was just talking with my colleagues earlier because I'm a bit brain dead because I've just come out of leading a 2-hour meeting on working with clients who've experienced abuse as children, particularly sexual abuse. And we talked about resourcing our clients. And one of the ways we resource them is we teach them about emotions, and we teach them about the purpose and function of feelings, and to feel their feelings and to look at the relationship that they have with different feelings. So how do you feel about anger? How did they deal with anger in your family growing up? What about sadness? What about fear? So the kind of feelings we have about feelings, which we call meta emotions, you know, all of this starts to kind of help us work with our own feelings. And as we know, as we often say, our feelings are the messenger and needs are the message. So our feelings take us, if we know how, they take us down to our needs. They're pointing to a need not being fulfilled. And so the importance of learning how to work with emotion so that we can work with needs is, to me, that's never ending work, personally anyway. And if that's what I'm doing with my children as a mother, I reckon that's probably one of the best things I can be doing to break my old patterns and teach them to feel more secure in themselves.
So to summarize so far, we're talking about our attachment styles are the behavior that manifests relative to the relationship with our own needs.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, and the ones we've pushed away and the ones we have fear around and the stories we have around them. Yeah, I think that's true pretty much most of the time.
Wow, again and again, it points to nonviolent communication. Such a sweetly simple, fundamental practice. There has been a fairly popular book that's certainly amongst circles at the moment called Attached by Dr. Amir Levine. And it's received really, really positive feedback from the New York Times. And I found it very valuable in my search for how do we develop, at a very practical level, how do we get more secure?
Yes, and you're going to share one of the models with us from that book, aren't you?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yes, thank you.
The CARP model, wasn't it?
CARP, exactly. Yeah, it's really quite simple stuff. But I've been using it as a checklist, and I use it across the board. So with my kids, and it's quite confronting. It certainly ties in with the shadow work that you and I have been talking about, because to really be consistent requires that if I'm feeling a bit tired, that I can still live according to my values. So consistent is the first one. To be available, of course, that means being present, really. The ability to hold space for someone, I would say, is being available.
And also, would that mean being sort of, your children know you're available. They know they can call you if they need to. They know that they can approach you, being approachable as well.
Yes, I like that.
Emotionally available.
Yes, that makes good sense. And perhaps even being clear about boundaries when I'm not available, so they then know when I am.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Okay, that's the A. What about the R?
So reliable, of course. Yeah, I mean, we all
doing what you say you're going to do, I suppose.
Oh, yes.
I know what you're thinking, Alexis. All of us have failed at all of these, right?
You, Rachel, surely. Yeah,
hey,
of course.
I've definitely been unreliable at times.
Yeah, that's right. So forgiving ourselves is, of course, key, but using the opportunity to get more reliable, responsive, which, as we spoke about yesterday morning, I think culturally has become a little bit slack. It seems to be culturally acceptable not to respond to messages. And I understand, we are all busy and we are bombarded with many conversations. There is a time that you do need to prioritize, but responsiveness, I think, is a big one. Just an acknowledgement that I've heard what you've said. And the final one is predictable.
Yes.
And I like this one because one of my clients said to me, it's predictable that I'm going to get a hug from you, so that was okay with her, even though in other circumstances she wouldn't be so comfortable. So I like that there's a bit of flexibility within that we can be ourselves, again, so long as we're predictably ourselves. I think that people know what to expect. It provides that framework for safety that I know you and I are very passionate about creating.
Yeah, it's I mean, so much of a secure attachment is about having a safe connection.
Yes.
Feeling safe enough to confide and safe enough to explore. And this is the dilemma of the child, in a way, is that they need to feel safe enough to come to mum or dad or the healthy adult, which is what we come hardwired for, a healthy adult. We don't always get one, and go to them and be soothed and protected by the mother or the father, but then feel safe enough that if we want to go and explore that playground or that whatever it is, that we know that mum or dad will be there. And you see kids I love going to playgrounds and seeing 3-year-olds at the top of the slippery side saying, mum, and when they can't find mum, they're a bit anxious, but then they see mum and then they're like, look at me, and mum says, you did it, and there's all this kind of reinforcement that creates the secure sense of self. Sort of, you can do it, I see you, I'm here for you. Go and explore and discover, come back when you need to. And this dynamic tension between separateness and togetherness, between adventure and safety. And so, yeah, we can all look at where we got maybe a bit out of balance with those.
I love that image. It does. There's so much exchange that happens in those moments. And it reminds me too that we don't need to overanalyze this stuff. As parents, it's so easy to be really, really tough on ourselves. But to recognize that, that the process of individuation itself, naturally we want to have our needs met, I believe, fundamentally, and children, more often than not would demonstrate that. And in fact, when I've looked at, the definition of a securely attached individual, or some of the behaviours that manifest in those that are securely attached, it includes the ability to express our needs, that's considered a positive demonstration. And this definition really just came from Wikipedia, which I know my public health professors would be scoffing at, but it's really wonderful.
But I will not.
He will not scoff at Wikipedia. No, well, I mean, it's a go-to for most of us these days. Yeah, there were some really powerful descriptions, and I like to use it just as even as a goal. So I might read it if that's okay. It's not too long-winded. So within romantic relationships, securely attached individuals are described as demonstrating excellent conflict resolution, mental flexibility, they're effective communicators, they avoid manipulation, they're comfortable with closeness without fearfulness of being enmeshed. But that one was an interesting one. They're quickly forgiving, they view sex and emotional intimacy as one, and they believe they can positively impact their relationships, as you were talking about earlier, with the self-efficacy, self-esteem, self-understanding. They care for their partners how they want to be cared for. Now, that was slightly ambiguous to me, but I took it to mean the way that the partner wants to be cared for. How would you read that? That a secure individual cares for their partner how they want to be cared for.
I mean, I think that speaks to empathy, right? So they can take the perspective of their partner and use their imagination, which is a big part of relationship therapy. I ask people to imagine their partner's experience. So to try and take the perspective of their partner. It could be that I want, to be treated, I want to treat them the way I want to be treated, but it could be the love languages thing, right? Of actually, I know that my partner would really appreciate it if I did this thing, which may not necessarily make me feel completely, loved and cared for, but I know it will make them feel loved and cared for. So I think it's that empathy piece, that perspective taking and empathy. You reckon? Yeah.
Yeah, and as you said yesterday, if I'm in contact with my needs, chances are I'm going to be better able to read your needs as well. And yes, absolutely. I would much rather be cared for in the way that I recognise rather than the way that you think I want to be cared for. So in summary, Wikipedia says they're great partners. They treat their spouses very well, as they're not afraid to give positively and ask for their needs to be met. Securely attached adults believe that there are many potential partners that would be responsive to their needs, and if they come across an individual who is not meeting their needs, they will typically lose interest very quickly, which I would say is a healthy strategy under those circumstances.
It is. I would agree. Mia has a question. I know we've probably only got 5 minutes left, but Mia wants to know, how can we learn to interact with a parent once we understand their attachment style?
Oh, with a parent?
Yeah, so say you've got a parent with a dismissive attachment style, or you could have a parent with an anxious, preoccupied style who sort of chases you and puts pressure on you for more and more. I would say that a couple of things. One, we need to always remember that we can't change other people. Two, it's okay to set limits and boundaries on how much time you spend with people, including your own parents. You get to choose the dosage, as I sometimes say to my clients, and I know that's not easy, but there's the difference between obligation and choosing, and you have some choice here. You don't have to be on their beck and call. You're an adult. I know this about you, Mia. And the third thing I would say, and it goes to the responsiveness in the CARP model that I keep wanting to call the crap model. I'm so sorry, Alexis.
Don't call it the crap. Well, I suppose we could do it. It'd have to be crap. Maybe we could call it the crap model.
Crap. C-R-R-A-P. No, CARP model. The first R is responsiveness, I think. And, the responsiveness is also the responsiveness to ourselves. So to notice when stress shows up, to notice when disappointment shows up or discomfort, and to be brave enough to express our emotions to our children, to our parents, to our friends, anyone we care about. It's an act of self-love and an act of love to let people know about how we're feeling and what we think we might be needing, because we don't even always know ourselves, but to have a go at expressing your own discomfort or your own need for space or respect or whatever it might be. So I hope that helps a little bit, Mia. I know it's a very broad answer. It's a fairly broad question as well.
It also reminds me that there's a couple of clients who are interested in bringing a parent along.
Oh, yeah.
So Mia, that's a possibility for you, if depending on how open your parents are. But to our workshops I'm talking about, which we will get to in just a moment. Kirsten's asking about DBT approach. Question mark.
Yes, I did answer that.
Oh.
I haven't been ignoring you, Alexis. I promise I've been looking at the comments.
No, that's of course.
And I just replied to say that DBT can be very helpful. DBT stands for dialectical behavior therapy. And there's so much I could say. I'll just say one thing, because people are like, what's dialectical? Dialectical means the opposites, the tension of the opposites. So instead of sort of thinking, it's like the antidote to black and white thinking and black and white living, understanding that we can live with things that feel and seem like opposites, paradoxes of being human and of life, the light and the shadow, and learning how to tolerate the stress of being human. Given duality. Yes, that's right. It points to it's a very Buddhistic kind of psychotherapy, as is ACT. So it's quite similar to ACT. I could say so much. That's enough for today.
Yes, I know that Kirsten has a particular interest in dialectical behavior therapy. Yeah, so we could, I know that Kirsten's coming to the workshop, which is very exciting. We could touch more on that at the workshop on Sunday, which in fact, it's a great time to mention that. There are still a few places. Would you like to tell a little bit, a bit more about, about what you'd like to share on Sunday, just the content? Yeah,
so we've called it the art and science of
attachment theory. Yeah, and how to build a more secure relationship. So essentially it will be based on the content of tonight, but we'll be able to go much deeper. And you and I have spoken about the possibility that people can come as individuals, or they can come with a romantic partner. They can come with a family member, because as we've been talking about, our attachment style does play out in our many, many relationships.
Yeah, but particularly those really close ones. You can even come with your assistance dog if that's required.
That's good to know, yes. And we are also NDIS providers, and we are also trauma informed. So you can trust that the workshop will be entirely confidential. Any photos that we take are for research purposes only. A little bit more exciting news on that to come. But yes, absolutely, you can trust that we are sensitive facilitators and very respectful of your privacy. So yeah, there's a few people on the list. We're excited to be having Marina, Kirsten and Anne and Trisha along. I'm hoping that Oliver and Loretta might join us. I'm hoping that Jessica and your mum might come. Michelle, you might even bring your man. So yes, we're looking forward to a really exciting day on Sunday. That's this coming Sunday, so a week from today, from 9:30 to 1:15. I'm sorry, 9 a.m. we kick off. 9 a.m.
Yes, and so we'll be talking more about attachment theory and attachment relationships, but looking more at the practical and experiential ways to get in touch with your own inner world of feelings and needs. And, so much of this work is about, I guess, seeing the validity and legitimacy of your own feelings and needs, believing that you have the right to be who you are, and then finding ways to express what's going on for you without blame, without the empathy killers that shut down communication or create unnecessary conflict and arguments. So it's how to walk that fine line in relationships. That's what we'll be covering.
Thank you. Yes. And Therese, it is a fine line. Yeah, go on.
It can be hard. And Therese wants to know if we're doing the workshop online. Alexis?
Thank you, Rachel. I believe this one we won't be. I'm really sorry, Therese. We will be recording it, however, and so you can access a copy. So please do get in contact with myself, preferably by email would be the simplest. I'll put my email in the comments below as well. And we can certainly send you a recording so that you can be a fly on the wall. But at the moment, we're looking to really build the chemistry of the group. And I think for the sake of simplicity, the hybrid can just, I think, damage the chemistry. So, but absolutely, to purchase it online, you'll be able to have access to all of the knowledge and resources. So that's a simple way that you can watch it. Even if you wanted to break it down, you might be able to digest it in over time.
Yeah, and it will be at a discounted price, obviously, if you buy the recording.
Yeah.
But contact Alexis through her website, and you're going to put that in the comments, you said.
I will, absolutely. I'll put the link to the tickets, and I'll also put my email address if anybody needs to contact me directly.
And Mia wants to know, just before we finish up, if the workshop is adaptable for a single Pringle, but I think she meant a single person.
I like a single Pringle. We can so run with that.
Or do you have to do the workshop with someone else? Absolutely not, Mia. This workshop is absolutely appropriate. Come by yourself. Anyone can do it. Single or not single, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. It will apply to so many relationships, past and present and future.
And in fact, coming as a single Pringle is probably ideal because you'll be bringing more security to your next relationship. You'll be seeking more secure relationships. And so it's a good time, really good time.
Yeah. No, she said she literally meant single Pringle. I'm stealing that. That's great. Thanks, Mia. Thank you so much, Alexis.
My pleasure, Rachel. Thank you also. A delight. I really love these conversations, and I'll look forward to, are we back on to 5 o'clock, live at 5 next Sunday? Yes.
I am 99% sure that we will be, and let me just quickly here look in my calendar.
That's the 14th. That's going to be the day of the workshop. You and I will probably be buzzing.
We will be pumped. So yes, we'll see everybody here at 5 o'clock next Sunday.
Great. That's wonderful. Thank you for joining, everybody, and stay well. Ciao.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.